Greetings, my name is Chamomile and this is an exploration of the entire galaxy sector by sector. Today, we're looking at the home sector of the Wookiees in 12th Cerulean Spear Command. The Wookiees' home planet is the planet Kashyyyk, the most densely populated world of the Kashyyyk system, which sits at the crossroads of not one, not two, nor even three, but four different, moderately significant hyperspace routes, which come together to make Kashyyyk possibly the single most important system in all of 12th Cerulean Spear. Thus, naturally, the sector is named after Mytaranor, a planet with a population of less than 1 billion, which is primarily famous as a shadow port for slave smugglers. Generously, maybe Mytaranor didn't have that reputation when the sector was being named, but Kashyyyk was still located in the middle of a bunch of trade routes, come on. Mytaranor is the domain of the Wookiees and is full of Wookiee colony worlds like Raccoon and Kwukar, the latter of which has a special place in my heart because it is the only Wookiee name whose basicization sounds at all like it might be a word in Chiriwok. Say, what did you say your name was again? I'm gonna write that down as Chewbacca. The Mytaranor sector is also home to the Trandoshan species, whose home planet of Dosha, or Trandosha, is also in the Kashyyyk system. The Trandoshans call it the Hiskasi system. Mytaranor sector is also home to Oda, an ice planet allegedly home to the Snorgar people. They live in underground cities kept hot by ancient technology that they forgot how to repair. Luke Skywalker and Han Solo supposedly hid on the planet from Boba Fett and helped extract a rebel spy who was there for some reason. I only bring this up because I have a policy of talking about every sentient species homeworld, even the alleged ones. Let's get back to Kashyyyk. According to legend, Kashyyyk was a planet conquered and terraformed by the Rakatan Infinite Empire in the primordial pre-Republic days. While Tatooine was terraformed into a lifeless wasteland because the Rakatans couldn't control it so they pitched a fit, Kashyyyk was terraformed to grow hypermassive supercrops, and when the Rakatans died and the wilderness reasserted itself, it was a wilderness of hypermassive super trees. The Wookiees and Trandoshans present different accounts of how the system joined the Republic. Technically, they don't contradict each other, but neither is verified by a reliable source, and taken together, they're a garbled mess. The Trandoshans say they joined the Republic in the early Republic era, while the Wookiees say the Kashyyyk made contact with the Republic several generations later in the Old Republic era, just a few decades before the war with Darth Revan's Sith Empire. And note, the Wookiees don't say they didn't join the Republic until then, but that was the first time they made contact with the Republic at all. So, we're meant to believe that Trandosha was a Republic member world for centuries, according to some calendars, millennia, before anyone thought to pop down to a lush, extremely habitable planet in the same star system to see what was going on down there. And despite having made contact with and joined the Republic far in advance of the Wookiees, it is the Trandoshans who must put up with being represented in the Galactic Senate by a Wookiee, not the other way around. That's not impossible, but it's pretty far-fetched. Weirder things have happened in the galaxy, but all of this goes away if we just assume that mutually incompatible calendars have been interpreted incorrectly and then been cemented into narratives by the Wookiees and Trandoshans, who are locked in an ancient race war that makes both of them extremely reluctant to admit to being wrong about anything, even trivial things like whose calendar dates are more accurate. My best guess as to the order of events here is that Dosha and Kashyyyk were both discovered by the Zerka Corporation in like the same week, probably the same day, and Zerka recruited the Trandoshans to help enslave the Wookiees. Since neither the Wookiees nor the Trandoshans had joined the Republic, none of the Republic protection on sentient rights applied to either of them, and Zerka Corporation enslaved some of the Wookiees with the help of the corrupt Wookiee chieftain Chundar. Chundar's brother Zalbar had broken a Wookiee taboo by attacking Chundar with his climbing claws and been exiled, but he would later return with the help of Darth Revan, themselves exiled from their Sith Empire by the betrayal of their apprentice Darth Malak, and Jolee Bindo, an ex-Jedi self-exiled to Kashyyyk after his break with the Jedi Order. With the help of the Jedi, Zalbar overthrew Chundar and put a stop to the Zerka slaving operation. Kashyyyk joined the Republic soon afterwards. The Zerka Corporation sided with the Sith in the Jedi Civil War, but that wouldn't have been true decades earlier when they first started operating on Kashyyyk. There was no Sith Empire to join at the time. There were a bunch of stray Sith warlords lying around Sith space, which was only nominally controlled by the Republic, but they were so incapable of acting as a state that Darth Revan made minimal use of them, preferring to rely on fallen Jedi. So, although our records don't actually say this directly, my best guess is that Zerka was still a Republic corporation when the Kashyyyk system was discovered. The Trandoshans worked with Zerka for decades before the Jedi Civil War, and that's what they mean when they say they joined the Republic before the Wookiees did. Trandoshans have a reputation for being a villain species, probably because Bossk was such a menace during the Imperial era, but they were Republic loyalists in the Clone Wars while the Wookiees tried to stay neutral for a while. There's reports of a brief CIS invasion during the Harvester campaign, although some historians argue that the Harvester campaign is a complete fabrication. It's very early in the war, and the Republic was desperate for stories of victory, so it might have been that some private citizen who was personally supportive of the Republic spun a story about the CIS having a secret Sith superweapon, and the Republic's most photogenic Jedi generals destroyed it. It's certainly a suspiciously self-contained series of battles, one in which the CIS try something and fail in such a way as leaves the state of the war pretty much exactly the same at the end of things as it was at the beginning. According to the stories, the CIS dug up an ancient Sith Force harvester and brought it to Alaris, a moon orbiting a gas giant in the Kashyyyk system and which had been colonized by the Wookiees, and planned to test it on the Wookiee population. Anakin Skywalker had been captured on a related mission, and Count Dooku planned to feed him to it. But Anakin broke out, sent word to Obi-Wan and his clone army, and the Republic drove the Separatists off of Alaris. The idea that the CIS dug a Sith weapon out of Renvar and Thule early in the war isn't too implausible, but it's weird that they tried to test it all the way out in Alaris. That part of the story seems like a garbled retelling of the Wookiee rebellions against the Empire, which makes me suspect that at minimum that battle, if not the entire Harvester campaign, probably never happened. The Alaris battle of the Harvester campaign is also spishy because the Wookiees stayed neutral for most of the war. They couldn't stay neutral forever, though. For one thing, Dosha declared themselves for the Republic from the jump, which meant their system was going to be a target regardless of whether they were neutral themselves. For another, after the Hutts decided to side with the Republic, or maybe more accurately decided against the CIS, denying them passage through Hutt space, the CIS's plan to link up their spinwards and trailing power blocks shifted to punching through the Republic-controlled mid-rim. Kashyyyk is the crossroads of the mid-rim, so no CIS path through it would be complete without Kashyyyk. You can pick your way through lesser hyper routes, but those routes are slower, and the whole point of controlling contiguous territory is to get reinforcements faster and for your ships to arrive with more reactor fuel for weapons, shields, and sublight engines. The CIS didn't just need any part of the mid-rim, they needed the Randon Run and the Great Kashyyyk Branch, which means they needed Kashyyyk. Kashyyyk was pretty far out of their way, though, and they didn't make a full assault on the planet until the final year of the war, when they were getting pretty desperate to link their disparate enclaves together through the Outer Rim before it was too late. The CIS invaded Kashyyyk, partly in hopes that they could still make the mid-rim connection work, partly to relieve pressure on the Outer Rim sieges in regional capitals like Megiddo and Siskiyne. The situation on Kashyyyk got so bad that Yoda felt the need to come lead the defenses personally. On the one hand, one guy is not going to make that much of a difference. It's not like the Wookiees were unled. Chief Adat Chuck is very well regarded by the Wookiees. On the other hand, Yoda wasn't stupid. He wouldn't have gone there if it didn't feel like a planet on the brink, where a nudge one direction or another could decide the whole battle. It must have been a close thing. The CIS forces abandoned the planet after the assassination of the Separatist Council on Mustafar, though, and the Wookiees got to celebrate a well-deserved victory for, like, a week. Palpatine wanted slave labor to rebuild the galaxy, both to keep popular will on his side as he reorganized the Republic into the Galactic Empire, and to work on various superweapon projects he hoped to use to rule the galaxy through direct force. The most famous of these is, of course, the Death Star, but there's a bunch of others: the Dark Trooper Project, multiple different kinds of Super Star Destroyer, and the general upscaling of the Stormtrooper Corps and the Imperial Navy. There was a bottomless demand for forced labor to complete these projects, and once deeply unpopular separatist-affiliated species like the Geonosians had been exhausted, the Imps turned to species like the Wookiees, good laborers who were loyal to the Republic, but, you know, they could have been more loyal. They only joined the Clone Wars near the end because the CIS violated their neutrality, which is kind of like treason if you redefine treason to include things that definitely aren't treason. It didn't help that the Trandoshans had been loyal to the Republic from the start and had a specious feud with the Wookiees going back millennia. Within 10 years of the end of the Clone Wars, Kashyyyk had been subjugated by the Empire and the Wookiees enslaved en masse, but it was a trouble spot for the Empire continuously. Rebel cells operated to liberate Wookiees from the earliest days of the rebellion because they were a reliable source of powerful and motivated rebel soldiers. The Imperials tried to use the same kind of control chips used on clones to thwart the uprisings, but those things never really worked. For a variety of reasons, they worked better on clones, but mostly because the clones were broadly willing to shoot the Jedi in the back, regardless of whether their control chips worked. Good soldiers follow orders and all that. On Wookiees, who had a much less conformist culture and a much more diverse gene pool, the chips weren't completely ineffective, but the bottom line is they didn't work. By the time of the Battle of Yavin, the rebels had de facto control of large stretches of the deep Kashyyyk wilderness, which they used as fighter bases and safe houses. Despite the Empire still controlling the planet's major infrastructure and running tons of slave camps across the surface, the rebels controlled enough of Kashyyyk's surface that rebels who needed somewhere to lie low while the heat blew over would flee to Kashyyyk to hide out there. After the Battle of Endor, rebel forces were focused on capturing the core and re-establishing the New Republic. This would both deprive the Empire of their primary economic engine, and the Empire was defeated by a lack of credits more than anything else, so losing the wealthy world to the core would hopefully be a finishing blow, and it would also be a significant political victory, allowing the rebellion to firmly establish themselves as the rightful successors to the Republic, a cause that quite a few Imperial sectors would surrender to without a fight. Chewbacca was naturally more invested in the fate of the Midrim and especially the Kashyyyk region, so he and Han Solo took a relatively small force of rebels to lead a general Wookiee uprising against the Imperial garrison. The revolt succeeded, and Kashyyyk became one of the worlds that joined what would become the New Republic even before it was formally declared on Coruscant the following year.